looking at me? Who represents the...
In case you haven't seen it, last week I made a video finding out what the average Formula 1 career looks like in terms of statistics, and therefore who is the most typical of Formula 1 drivers. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you. The most average driver might hit you as a bit of a surprise. While I was working on that, it got me thinking about another little concept, and originally this entire little bonus video was in the script for that main video, but I cut it out due to time because it was a tangent that went on for several minutes and it wasn't really getting towards the point of that first video. Doesn't mean though that we can't discuss it here, and so I present who is the most average champion of all time in Formula 1. We have 34 drivers crowned the World Drivers' Champion since the start of the championship in 1950, but obviously not every champion is created equally. Some drivers have one championship and some have 7. Some won it right at the start of their career and some waited till the very end. But I was curious to know who the average Formula 1 champion is, and therefore what the average champion's career actually looks like. How many wins, how many podiums, how many seasons until they actually won that championship, and how old were they when they did it? To do this, we can quickly run through the categories in the previous video, chuck in a few more categories that only apply to champions, figure out who ranks closest to 17.5th out of this bunch, and then voila, we have our Mr. Mid champion. Easy peasy. And so, let's take a look. But first, I've been given exactly 5 seconds to tell you about the new merch on MrV'sGarage.com. Curves Collection t-shirts, famous corners in a stylish design, available now at MrV'sGarage.com. Absolutely nailed it. It should come as no surprise that champions typically have much longer careers than the average driver. The reason for this is really a two-way thing. Sometimes you just have to stick around in the sport for a long time, proving yourself, and then eventually getting a spot in a top team and a chance to actually win the title. Think people like Mansell or Nico Rosberg. And then on the other hand, if you prove you're good straight away and maybe even win a title early, well, teams are more likely to keep you around and help you play out a long career. Think people like Fernando Alonso. While the average F1 driver was involved in 3 seasons throughout the entire history of the sport, the average champion was instead involved in 11. Due to the much higher number of seasons, it follows that lots of these other stats are higher as well. The lowest entries and starts for a champion is 33 entries and 32 starts for Alberto Ascari, but he did do this over 6 seasons, it's just the seasons were much shorter back then. Average entries for a champion, 140. Average starts, 136. Theoretically, you can win the championship without ever getting a pole position, and Denny Hulme almost did that with his 1 career pole position, which he actually got well after he became the world champion, but we don't have anyone with 0. The average here is actually 17.5, which might seem low, but I think in recent years we've just gotten used to seasons like 2023, where Max Verstappen gets 13 in a single year. Wins, and once again, in theory, you don't need to have any to win a Drivers' Championship, but it would be a bit of a struggle. The lowest career wins for a champion, 3 for both Mike Hawthorn and Phil Hill. The average, 17.5 to match the pole positions, which once again means that Max Verstappen's 2023 was better than some champions' entire career. Those 17.5 wins form part of the 35.5 average podiums for a champion, a far cry from Lewis Hamilton's 202, and once again, fastest laps to me seems surprisingly low at just 14. Average grid position is, unsurprisingly, not bad, P6.96. The worst here is Emerson Fittipaldi with P11.96. Fittipaldi was never the best qualifier in his career, but it's also worth noting that after he left McLaren, he spent the entire second half of his career driving cars that were basically, garbage. The average champion led 1,204 laps during their career, but this stat sits on an enormous spread from Phil Hill on 171 up to Lewis Hamilton on 5,486. That number is crazy for Lewis, and if my calculations are correct, and there have been 72,570 laps in the entire history of the sport, that means that Lewis Hamilton has led 7.5% of all of them. In fact, if you take just Hamilton, Schumacher, Vettel and Verstappen, they have combined to lead the pack for almost 25% of all of Formula 1, which is crazy. There are some other stats that are going to go into this final calculation, but let's skip to some of the ones that only apply to champions. How about number of seasons before becoming a champion? The lowest here says 1 for Farina, but I don't really count him as a rookie champion, as obviously he was driving Grand Prix before the championship was even a thing. The highest here is 13 seasons for Nigel Mansell, followed by Rosberg and then Button. The average champion wins their first title in their 5th season, a feat achieved by 8 of our champions, including Jackie Stewart, Niki Lauda, and Ayrton Senna. Pretty good company to keep. Adjusted for number of races, Nico Rosberg actually now has the longest career before becoming a champion, where the average here is 52 races before being crowned. Age at first title ranges from 23 for Hamilton and Vettel up to 40 for Fangio and 43 for Nino Farina. The average here, 29.5, which is actually my current age. And for that reason, and that reason alone, it means that I am now unlikely to ever become a Formula 1 world champion. That sucks. It does, however, give most of our current grid time to make it on par. And then finally, how many championships does our average champion actually win? This is weirdly split exactly in half, with 17 drivers winning just 1, and then 17 drivers having 2 or more, which means those multiple title winners are holding 58 season championships between them, the greedy bastards. As the median sits directly between these two halves, it is technically 1.5 titles, but someone who's won either 1 or 2 is a pretty good match for our average. And so, with these theoretical career statistics, who fits the bill? Taking an average rank across all these categories with the target of being 17.5 overall, we get one person who lands almost exactly on the mark. Jenson Button. He does, however, have a very high variance, flip-flopping between high ranks and low ones. He won the correct number of titles and did it at the right age, but he has a much longer career than the average, while at the same time having less pole positions, less wins, and less fastest laps. But somehow more podiums than the average? How did you do that, Jenson? If we look either side of Jenson Button for someone with a lower variance, on one side we get Emerson Fittipaldi, and on the other side, closer to the mark, we get Jacques Villeneuve. While he obviously had a lot of success very early in his career and won his title in only his 2nd season, the rest of Villeneuve's stats do line up really nicely with our theoretical average champion. I don't think many of you would have picked Villeneuve for this, but the numbers don't lie. And so from this point forwards, Jacques Villeneuve will be our measuring post to see if any given champion is below average or one of the very best. Wait a minute, hang on. If I found all these stats to rank all the champions and we can pinpoint who's in the middle, well, surely that means we can see who's above the middle. And surely it means we can see who's the very best. The age-old debate in Formula 1, the greatest of all time, and I've accidentally calculated it while doing something completely different. I'm not sure I should even open this. This knowledge might be too powerful. If I do, there's no going back. Formula 1 discourse will be changed forever. No more discussion, no more debate. We will have the answer, and we'll have to move on with our lives. But I kind of feel like I have to now. Okay, here goes. Let's do this together. Oh, him? Really? I didn't realize the stats were that good. I guess he did start early. And that consistency is crazy. This is going to upset some people. You know what? Maybe I don't need to read this out. Maybe the greatest of all time is whoever you want it to be. Yeah, let's go with that. Let's continue having your discussions and think about the things that you think are important in judging the greatest to ever do it. No need to read this out. Let's just pretend this letter didn't even ever exist. How about that? Just gonna put that down there. Just gonna put it down there. Great.